Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Tech Social. My name is Gabi. I'm a business analyst and product owner here at Cogent. And as always, Edgar Martinez is here with us. He's moderating this event and keeping us moving. We're really excited to have Jai Oberoi here. He's a data and AI strategist, and he brings a strong mix of like technical and then real world business experiences. So we're really looking forward to this practical conversation. And today's topic is AI in modern business models, how aligning technology, people, and processes is becoming essential to building real customer trust. Um, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to put them on the chat. We're live in LinkedIn and YouTube. And with that said, we can get started. Edgar, over to you.
Thank you, Gavi. Yeah, we are really excited to know more about Jay's experience, and also we were talking before going live to about what's hype, what's actually happening in companies, and what's precisely this difference, right? That we need to make sure that whatever we are implementing actually makes sense for the business. So I think this is going to be a great discussion. Looking forward to it. And also, I want to say once again, welcome, Jay. Thank you for being here with us today. Over
Thank
to
you.
you. Please tell us more about yourself and what you have been doing
Yeah.
these days, and let's start from there.
Yeah, sure. So I've been in the data analytics AI world 20 plus, almost 30 years, financial industries, healthcare, and now consulting. And if you look at my profile, one of the first companies that I worked at, I mean, it was the place where AI was generated in the financial services world, predictive model, machine learning, and so on and so on. And now I'm really helping clients think about how do they start, right? Do they jump right in? Do they think about the human aspects of it? Or are they just worried about the stakeholders, meaning the money? And in this world, there's examples of all sorts of things. And what I'm trying to do is help everyone. And hopefully this conversation helps others to think about it's a coexistence. It's not a replacement. It's not a silver bullet, right? At least at this moment, in terms of the hype, right? It is how do you manage through the cycle in this modern world, and what do customers expect from their companies and advocacy? So hopefully that gives a
Mhm,
good perspective of where I'm coming from.
mhm. Yes, that sounds great. So I think first of all, something I would like to dive a little deeper is, can you tell us more about how you started connecting these different fields in your trajectory in your career? Meaning, I understand that you started with analytics and data, right? And how now that transition into AI, right?
Yeah.
So could you tell us more about this? How these fields are intertwined, and for you, what was your experience getting into the AI field originally?
Yeah, it's interesting. That question is very interesting because if you truly look at my background, I actually have a degree in accounting
Mhm.
and a minor in computer information systems and technology. And what I really was attracted to is where is the middle place of, like, back in the days with statisticians and data analysts, which then morphed into data scientists, and now to AI engineers, right? Like, it was the middle ground where all operations, analytics, data, technology, finance, like marketing, all come together. And what I love about what I've been able to do in the last 20, 30 years is make those connections, bridge between all the different areas, speak the different languages, be a translator, to where now we are at the actual revolution area, right? Not an evolution, revolution, that is putting all the pieces back together, right? There was a shift back in the day of like big data, right? Then the swamps became, and then like, okay, how do you structure? Then there was no structure, right? just be able to access the data. Then there was RPAs, then there were machine learnings. Now, Gen AI with the large language model, neural networks. If you're sitting there as a business employee or a business leader, you're trying to figure out, well, wait a minute, I've got an MBA. I don't have all this technology experience, or I have all this technology. I don't have a business experience, or I'm an operations person. I don't have the business or technology, or finance, and I don't have all these pieces. And so how do you bring it together? And I believe that's what I've been focused so much on, is going from numbers based, which are facts and data, to language based of like business models, to connecting the dots with technology, to how do you operate, and what's the most satisfying is the human dynamics in all of that, and bringing it all together so that you are coexisting and driving value from not just a human perspective, dollars and kind of the evolution of a business, right? That says, hey, I can scale at a exponential degree.
Wow. Yeah. So I think what you're saying is, like I would call it maybe the consultant's dream to be able to speak all of those languages, as you were saying.
I mean, I'm loving life right now. I'm so glad that I came out of corporate world, right, where I'm just in one area, one company, to where I can span across multiple. And what is amazing is how many of my colleagues and friends and network are like, let's have a conversation. Let's talk about, what do you see here? Is it all about like, the replacement of humans with technology and these bots and agents? Or are you worried about, AI safety? Or are you worried about how the hallucination is going to actually cause impact to trust in a consumer or a member or so and so, right? And this is a beautiful place, right? It is like you can speak all different languages and help connect the dots, because you can provide a perspective that is on all sides, and you can challenge based on where someone is coming from and get them to think differently, because now they have more information, exactly like what a model does.
Right. Yes, that really connects the dots, as you were saying. So when you my next question would be, we are speaking about this interesting background that you have, and how you started with the facts, and then you moved into other areas in the business, right? Around the business. And then when you entered the AI space, right? It was more about traditional machine learning models. I'm kind of asking about that. And how you see the transition between that classical machine learning and now the new AI kind of thing, in your perspective, in your career, in your experience, right?
Yeah. So let me play back what you're really asking is like, how did AI evolve over time, and what kind of the implications and or shifts in business have been enabled by that? Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely.
So if you think about back in the day with linear regression models and statistics and all that, you're like, hey, trying to figure out risk-based pricing and all that kind of stuff, right? Then you shift into more like rule-based. Hey, look, if this happens, do this, and if this happens, do this, right? Like if you have a bad transaction, lower the credit line. If you have fraud detection, hey, put a stop in for any transactions. To then you get into like, okay, well, how do you think about predictive of fraud, or predicting likelihood to respond to a certain offer, right? To then, okay, now how do you incorporate, hey, look, I've had these types of transactions, what makes sense from a risk, from a profitability, from all these other things that then get into like machine learning aspects of it. Then you get to automation with the RPA, robotic process automation, where now you can take some, basic standard processes take a file from here, review these columns, make this formula, put it over here, do X, Y, Z, right? To even like robotic process intelligence, RPI, right? Where now you have some intelligence of how things work, to then price elasticity, right? So you think about some neural network aspects of it coming into play, ensuring that there's no bias, right? And making sure there's fair lending practices are incorporated, to large language models, where now you're able to parse through so much data. Think about the web, think about the documents and all that, summarize emails, summarize documents, become so more intelligent. Forget about efficiency, more intelligent, right? Because something that might have taken you, months to do will take you minutes. And you now become more educated and more intelligent in terms of how you're impacting the business. And that's kind of where we are right now. And the next thing that's happening is, how do you think about taking those individual things and turning them into agents? And then agents, okay, well, how do you link agents together so that you have like a supervisory agent that's working together? And how do you ensure that the humans are in the loop of that, right? Where I see it going is going to be, you're now interacting with agents and they're asking based on your role, hey, I see you're a fraud analyst. I think you need these 3 agents. Do you want me to turn them on for you? Oh, by the way, I see that you don't have access to this agent because it has MPI data in it. Would you like me to submit a request for you to get approval to that? And then it gets triggered to a responsible person who's looking at that, right? To say, hey, should this person have access to this? What are they trying to do with this? And then, oh, well, wait a minute, there's an agent that doesn't exist, then to a product manager. Like, this is the evolution of how we're going from something simple, narrow, to like changing the way we interact with data, technology, people, business model, everything. So hopefully that gives you a good perspective of like from the start to like where I think it is kind of going.
So something that caught my attention was that particular piece where you were talking about machine learning, right? That was at its time part of the core whenever you were thinking about AI. And at that moment, what I'm thinking about the interaction between, for example, a machine learning model and a person is that a machine learning model could help you with very specific tasks, right? That were, as you were saying, narrow, right? And it was, the goal was that it was more efficient than the work that a person can do. Right. And at the same time, I can think about it as a tool in the sense of, for example, finding patterns, right? Or understanding data in some particular way. So in that sense, what I see is that the person was interacting with this tool more as something that you would do with a calculator, for example, right? You take it, you turn it on, then you make operations, and then you get output from that, and you act on it, right? So it was like this kind of loop, as far as I can see. And as you were mentioning now, the level of interaction that we are having with these agents or these particular programs that access artificial intelligence, or at least LLMs, then it's really changing the way, right, in which we are making our work. So my point is that I believe that it is true that this change in the experience and the way in which we are working with this artificial intelligence, based on my experience, doesn't replace the function of a person, right? The person needs to be there, still, as you were saying, at least for the moment, right? Still supervising, still reviewing, and still making sure that things are working the way they should work. So that brings me now to my next question, that is, what happens with these agents and this particular implementation of AI when we can say that the results are not non-deterministic, meaning they are mm, they are prone, right, to suffer from hallucinations or other things that won't allow it to go through the same path all the time and give consistent results. What happens with that in terms of how we need to be aware of how this new technology is working and the results, as you were saying, right? I
Yeah.
think the impact, the most important impact is that in the enterprise environment, you have to get a layer that is deterministic because you don't want a agent to ship 1,000 or 10,000 things when you were meaning to send 10, right? That would be catastrophic to that level. So, in your opinion, how is that role of the person changing, and how to handle these particularities of the new tools that we have?
Yeah. So you're basically talking about like what is the role of a human in
Mhm,
this kind of new world of technology revolution, right?
mhm, mhm,
It's interesting because I think humans, I mean, we all have bad short-term memory, right?
mhm,
And I think about back in the day with machine learning and AI models, and there's a particular one that there's a couple of them, but this one it sticks in my mind was when parents got a email slash letter in the mail that hey, so and so is expecting, and it was based on the purchase trends and patterns, and it was a 16-year-old, and that raised so many flags of how are these models, these algorithms working, and what is the privacy, what is the regulations, what is the human aspect of it, right? Did they give permission? Did they not give permission for this? What do they know is a black box versus its explainability? I think we're in a similar place now, right? In that we need to be able to explain how the machine got to where it got, right?
mhm,
How did it achieve that result? And the humans need to verify this. Because at the end of the day, you're not going to hold a machine responsible. You're going to hold the human who enabled that machine responsible. And at the end of the day of that one, you're not going to hold the employee responsible. You're going to hold the company and the CEO and the shareholder responsible. And so that's why there's so much focusing on human in the loop, right? And the dream of like, hey, I can replace 500 people with 5-10 agents. It's a dream. It is future wise, right? You could think about like I can shift 500 people to do other more valuable things because the day-to-day transactions that they were doing really like push a button kind of thing, right? And from a human perspective, that's more valuable, right? That's more exciting, that I can pick up new skills, I can upskill, I can enjoy the intelligence that is being explored in every day without having to do the day-to-day push the button, right? So
mhm,
I believe as long as we can engage in a honest discussion with every employee, with every consumer, customer, prospect, whatever it might be, that and the transparency is there and the explainability is there, this is going to be the biggest change in the world that we've experienced to date. The issue right now is there's this thing called being afraid of the machines. And we can
mhm,
get past that as long as we put the right mechanisms in place, like AI governance, right? Responsible AI. Think about like, well, what does the business model need to be reimagined, right? The workflows need to be reimagined. Where does the human need to be engaged, right? Even with like co-pilots for like GitHub and others with code, They can do a lot of great coding. Awesome. But is it doing the right way of coding in the way that we would want it to do it? Is it getting the right results? And so being able to go through that and really, review it and make sure it's doing the right things is where the human really comes into play. So Edgar, hopefully that gives you a good perspective of like where the humans, I still see where we all still need to coexist in as one and not like one or the other.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Okay. I think it's also very interesting what you mentioned regarding the this governance, right? And what I've seen happening also is we are thinking. Well, first of all, I think sometimes when we are talking about enterprise and corporate, there's some risk aversion, right? Kind of um, really embedded into that culture. And then I think as people we need to tackle other things as well, right? For example, as you were saying, the resistance, like being afraid. I think whenever we are seeing new things happening, right, and how this new wave of artificial intelligence is creating new things that before were thought to be human manageable only, right? Like, for example, 3D animations, or I don't know, generating text and images and videos and all of these things, right? Even code. So I think it's normal for a person, right? I mean, that's why it's one of our core instincts to be first, at least, afraid of what is happening, because we may perceive some threat on that, right? Like, this is my way of living, and now it seems a computer would be able to do it by itself, right? So I think we have this level of resistance, let's say. And from there, I see other things, right? Like, for example, you may be willing to do it, but you also need to be, skilled up to have the right skills, right? To implement that. And after that, you need to see how that really integrates into the work that you are doing, and how you are actually bringing value to the company and to the job that you do, right? In what cases you can use it, in what cases you cannot, right? I think that's another layer that you need to develop. And at this stage, I think these kind of things, right, really require this guidance, because in general, it wouldn't be easy to find a person that is able to go through all of this, um, if that person was not originally in this kind of space, right, involved with technology. So how's that in your experience? What's this interaction with the people when you are about to implement an AI solution? What's the behavior, and what would be for you good tips for these people who are receiving these AI initiatives, and how to adopt them the best, right? So the outcome can be maximized in terms of being beneficial for everyone.
Yeah. No, you're bringing up something great that I don't think a lot of people talk about, is how do you manage through change, right? As humans, we still deal with that, right? Hey, I'm single, now I got married. Hey, I'm married, now I got kids. Hey, I've got kids that are now going to college. Change is always there. I used to work in this city, now I work in that city. All right, like I live in an apartment, now I live in a house, right? I used to just take a train, now I got to own a car. Like, we go through change so much. The one thing that is the driving factor, and when you reflect on your own self, is when you went through a good change, right? Is that you were part of that change, right? It wasn't done to you. You think about like the change that people are afraid of, right? Loss of a job, that was done to me, right? Hey, I've got a surprise, a new one coming in now. Whoa, I didn't know that's changed, but you adapt, right? You adapt to it, and you actually grow from it. And I think we need to internalize that aspect of it and not be so resistant to the possibilities, right? I always say everything is it's a great opportunity. Everything is a great opportunity. When you think about it from that positive intent perspective, you are going to adapt very well and do very well, in your own life and financially and other ways, right? And so I think the thing that is missing today is everyone is so like hungry and or afraid of like missing the train on this, right? That they're just jumping all in, spending billions and billions of dollars on it, and they're missing the bigger picture of how is this all going to work, right? How are we going to monetize this? How are we going to make sure that our business model is set up for this? And so one of the biggest gaps that I see, and I'm trying to help in this, is education at the top needs to happen, because maybe it's not about product line based organizations. Maybe it's about experience based organizations, right? Hey, you have a front door acquisition, boom. Now you have a growth, boom. Now you have a servicing, boom, right? Like it's a very different dynamic. And I believe not many senior leaders are set up for that yet. And they're trying to figure out how to do it, right? And some of them are doing the, imposter syndrome and they're going through it, whatever, right? But others are truly coming to reality of, I need help. And that is not a weakness. That is a strength of a great leader, is to ask for guidance and help, to say, I need to be educated on what is an agent, what is an LLM, what's an MCV, what's the labeling, tagging, whatever. Like, how do I see this happening? What are my risks, right? What am I going to lose in attrition? Well, what's the training that I need to have? How do I think about hiring the talent in the future as we age, right? And we retire. There's so much here that the leaders need to step up and be leaders through this change above not just the company, not just the society, but the humans that are actually that they're leading, right? And so I try to help and guide in that perspective, to say, think about the change management, think about the end user of this thing, be it an employee, be it your consumer, your customer, your member, and think about it from their perspective, so that you are meeting everyone in the place that they are at. Edgar, hopefully that gives you good, like it's a very sophisticated but yet simple solution for all of this.
Yes, definitely. So I will keep your phrase all the time. Everything is a great opportunity. I really like that kind of mentality. And at the same time, I'm curious, right? When you are talking to these business leaders, and let's start thinking about the fact that they are willing, right, to learn. So how do you make that learning memorable in the sense of, how do you make it so they can internalize it deeply, right? What's that example that you give to them, so they are convinced, okay, this is something that I really want to get deeper into, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's not a one size fits all. That's for sure, right? We all learn differently. Some like hands-on, some like to read, some like to internalize, some like to speak out, some whatever, right? So every leader, every stage of a leader, right, level of a leader, has a different perspective. One, you might go in and say, hey, let me draw you a picture of how the possibilities, right, the art of the possible could be. Here's kind of how you do today. Here's how you can think about tomorrow. And you have a good discussion that is a two-way, right? Not a one-way. It's a two-way discussion, actual discussion. And that, that they're learning through that, right? In others, you actually start from base 101, right? Maybe not even 101, like zero. let me talk to you about like what are all the different types of AI. Because everybody's thinking, oh, I need to use the Gen AI or an agent when all you need is an algorithm or linear regression or an IPA that you already have today. And you could get efficiency. Not going to get intelligence as much, but you get efficiency, right? And so you try to educate them on all the different types. Now that you've got them, because they're asking good questions around the way, right? Then you say, well, let me turn it over to now what you will care about. If you're talking about marketing, well, how would this change or evolve or revolutionize your marketing business? And you give them examples, right? And you give them examples of like what they could do today versus what they need to get enabled working with their tech partners for tomorrow. If you're talking with finance, well, how do you finance? Like, how do you think about the forecasting aspects of it, right? How can you predict better rather than just 80 days, 60 days, 90 days out? It's 3 months, 6 months, right? And so that you can be more thinking about like OpEx aspects of it, right? If you're thinking about your global security aspects, right, SecOps aspects of it, you're thinking about, well, how do I detect threats and vulnerability in this new world? And you start to guide them towards what they care about, not about what you're trying to teach them. And that's how it gets resonated way more with each person that you're engaging with at any level of leadership.
Yes. Okay. I really think that approach, that one size, or rather not using one size fits all, right, makes a lot of sense. I also saw, Gabby, I think you wanted to add something. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, I mean, you kind of asked what I wanted to ask. I wanted to ask him, like, what was the biggest misunderstanding leaders have about what AI can really do for their organization, like realistically?
Yeah.
So,
It's interesting you asked that question because I had a conversation with one of my friends who's a CEO of a big, chip company. And he goes, Jay, I think we were watching football or something. We are having this conversation. And he's like, Jay, I hear everybody's like, I'm going to get so much revenue or I'm going to save a lot of money. And so there's an OpEx or revenue generation. I'm going to be able to eliminate all these jobs and really be very, very efficient. And I was like, you're missing the boat. He's like, what do you mean? I said, you're missing the boat. It's not about the efficiency aspects of it. It is about reimagining how your business works. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, well, think about personalization. Personalization, we talk very much about like humans and all that, right? And think about the consumer products and all that. Well, we'll meet you wherever you are. If you're in this, financial need, we're going to give you X. If you're in this, your journey as as a human, you're here. Whatever, my education wise, you're here. You personalize it. He goes, I don't have that I don't have those. I'm a B2B, and I'm like, well, even as a B2B, personalization is important. You can personalize even B2B. Well, what's the size of this company? How can I help this company grow? Well, what are the types of products that I have that could help them? Well, they already bought these products. Well, what's the likelihood that they will buy these ones? Well, what if they bought these 3 types of products that I have, these extra chips and whatnot, that it would actually improves their productivity and increase their revenue generation. The language we speak changes. And that's the part that is the light bulb clicked in his head. And he was like, Jay, would you I need you to come and talk. He's like, I have a CEO, roundtable stuff set up and you should come and talk to us. And because we believe the way I talked about it, not the way you're talking about it. And so I've been trying to help a little bit here and there just to kind of guide in that discussion. And I'm hopeful that this will also enable others to understand that this is a broader thing than just the hype of I'm going to be able to eliminate so much cost or I'm going to be able to generate so much revenue by keeping my business the same way I have. That is a false prophecy, right? You will need to evolve your business
Right.
through this to actually take advantage of this great, amazing technology that we've got. And if you don't, you're going to fall behind.
Mhm.
So, Jay, we often talk about AI improving like speed and efficiency, and in these like 35 minutes, I have heard you talking about those two things. But also today's topic puts trust at the center, right? And I was thinking about our last episode. I don't know if you went, but in December there was an AWS reInvent event, and one of our tech leaders went there, and we had him, and we were talking about it. And I remember he was saying like responsible AI was everywhere. Like AWS made sure that on every like keynote and things like that, they would talk about it, right? So from your perspective, how does AI help build trust with customers, and how it can just as easily damage it?
Yeah. So I think we're seeing some of the damage that's happening with social media and other things where bots are doing whatever, right? And people are believing what's out
Right.
there, right? I think back in the day when we said, "Hey, look, this was generated by a model or whatever," like, and now we're starting to see more transparency that, hey, you're talking to an agent that is a bot, not a person. If you'd like to speak to a person, press X or whatever, right? Like that type of language, that type of disclaimer on a screen that says AI generated or an image. I think that is step one, right? I think the next level is how do you even get to that from an internal perspective? And so I think like I know I talked about AWS and reInvent and AI governance and all that, right? And people are trying to mold their model governance to be AI governance. And if you look at some of the policies and all that from the EU about AI systems and whatnot, it's not just about the model. It's about what's the data going into the model? How does the model function? What is it being used for? How is the output of that? How does the feedback loop work? It's the end-to-end aspect of it. And that is a change because we've never thought about it. We always, basically isolated different parts of it, right? And so now with this, you have to think about end-to-end. And so when you think about end-to-end, the trust needs to be built. Did I label the data right? Did I tag the data right? Did I capture the data right from the actual consumer that actually inputted it, right? Or the transaction that happened that captured it, to the how did I actually put it into the model? Well, what did the model do with it? There's explainability, there's guardrails. Then, okay, now what's the output of it? Is it accurate? Is a human in the loop, making sure there's validations happening, recalibrations happening, looking at drifts, all that kind of stuff. And then feedback loop, is it working in the right way? All of that by showing folks, right, people that this is the way we're managing this entire application. Forget about like an agent, whatever. It's an application from beginning to end. That is going to start to be more and more of a, oh, I understand. And guess what? Many people work for companies that do this stuff. And guess what? They're also consumers. And so as you got to start to understand the explainability of all this, the lineage, the traceability of all this, you then start to have discussions with your friends and family members and others, which then starts to trickle and trickle and trickle. Now everybody starts to understand how things work. And so it's a longer game of this. It's not a, hey, this thing is going to solve it right now, but just putting a disclaimer and your trust is going to be out there. It's going to take time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I guess that time it's also linked to how technology will keep evolving, right? And as you were saying, how as consumers we can be experiencing AI, right?
Yeah.
What I'm thinking is as the user interfaces keep evolving, we will start seeing most likely different ways to interact with it. What I can think of top of my head is using voice, right, to interact with agents.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that when we are at the airport and then you are talking to your agent, most likely more people will be curious about it and will start also looking for a way to do the same. And
Yeah.
eventually that will be taken into companies, right?
Yeah.
So I agree. It will take time, but at the same time, I can see people already doing this kind of stuff, right? As
Yes.
in
Yes.
the other way, we were in the drugstore, and this person who should know about medicine, but anyway, that person was asking ChatGPT about one particular medicine, right? And the fact that you start seeing that
Yeah.
everywhere then
Yeah.
tells you that the adoption will start accelerating in a way. So, what about when we say trust in enterprise, right? We also think about privacy.
Yes.
What happens with, in particular, large language models? Many of them offer connection to APIs, and that we can send information to get it processed and back, right? But what happens in the enterprise? Normally, um, based on my experience, it's way more about I don't want to get loose or I don't want to miss track of my data, right? And I tend to keep it on-prem, right? Secure on my own environment. So what are the precautions and in general the guidelines that you would recommend to keep that privacy of the information? Jay?
Yeah. So great question, because this is something that everyone is struggling with, right?
Mhm.
And especially with the cloud. And so, some companies still have on-prem, and they're like, "Hey, I don't want to go to the cloud because I'm going to lose this, this security that I've got," which is not accurate. Like, even if you go to the cloud, you have it, right? I think the bigger question is, how do these LLMs work, and are there vulnerabilities in the LLMs? And if so, how you're managing that, monitoring that, and all that. And where in my last role at the company I was at, I actually built a information governance group committee. Right, we formalized it under the risk structure, and guess one of the main parties that was there, CISOs, right? Because the security operations teams, they are the ones held left with the cleanup when this happens, right? Like, oh, while we have a vulnerability, now systems need to be shut down, customers can't do this, right? Like, and so CISOs are like, oh, wait, let's go talk to the board about these things, right? And then legal and compliance comes into play. Okay, well, what can we do, what we shouldn't do, whatever, right? How do we protect the consumers? How do we protect the employees? How do we protect the company? And then you got your CTOs and CIOs saying, okay, well, what do we need to enable the guardrails so that we don't have this type of issue and we manage to do it? Then you have your governance teams out there, operations, saying, okay, well, how do we make sure the process works in a way that there's no loopholes, right? And we can show positive intent to build that trust. And so what's happening now is there are mechanisms being put in play that are, hey, how do you approve a model? Okay. How do you ensure that the APIs aren't rogue APIs, so API gateways, right? I think that was already back in the day, and now it's becoming more and more. There's a new aspect that's coming out, is a AI gateway or AI hub, right? Where all your components are configured and you can actually reuse and apply. And so you know exactly where things are, right? Platform proliferation is reducing, so that you only have, maybe you have an environment for test and learn, right? Experimentation. And then you have a separate environment for dev and production, right? And you have certain gates that you need to go through. The mechanisms between a getting approval of a model, a use case, and then the MRM, the model risk management governance process, they're becoming as one. They're being interconnected. to ensure that the model that was used for the purpose that it was designed for and requested for is actually doing what the model was supposed to do and nothing more or less. And if not, and if it starts to change, you go back. You need to recalibrate. You need to rethink, does that model work? And not all models work for all use cases. And not all use cases use the same model, right? So you need to think about, like, how do you monitor for that? How do you think about some of these models and use cases and say, hey, this model worked great for this use case, but really bad for this one. We should say we never want to use it for that use case ever again, right? And so this mechanism needs to be put in place. And that's what companies at the enterprise level are starting to do. And so the saying of take 2 steps back, or take a step back to take 2 steps forward, right? Like take a step back to speed up, right? Slow down to speed up. That's what they're doing. And that is, it's becoming way more valuable and having a larger impact. That, yeah, you may take a slowdown for 12 months, but guess what? Now you just were able to years in like a month because you took those things and those steps in place. In those use cases, you were able to, expand on those use cases that you didn't have line of sight to before. Now you can enable them. And the cost savings, well, instead of everybody building whatever they want, you're now having reusability. And guess what? Your costs have decreased. And so, like, all these things work together.
You mentioned something interesting, Jay, about experimentation or how to jump from there to production, right? And I've heard when we started working with LLMs some time ago, it was all about for the early adopters, go and experiment, right? Go try things and start getting used to what you can do with AI. So for many people who are starting into that path, would you recommend that as a safe path to eventually get to applications into production? Or what would be for you the best way to, if you're curious about it and you really want to start, as you were saying, changing your business model, right? What would be those initial steps for these people? So it's not only a at least cheap experiment, but later, if you don't control it, expensive. How do you turn that into actual benefits for your company and for your business model? In that case.
Yeah, no, you're getting to a heart of the question of, like, how do you balance between expenditure and innovation, right? And so that you're not wasting money, but you're getting a good ROI for the investments that you're making, right? And what's amazing is you could do this in a way that is with a good sample, database environment, right? You could do this with like smaller LLMs. You could do it with like a business case use case versus like, I just want to go play and I just want to see what this does, right? Be more thoughtful, be more deliberate, right? Be more intentional about the part of the art of the possibilities. And what that requires is more thought put into, what are you trying to accomplish? Why are you trying to accomplish this? What are you hoping to get out of this? So that you can truly measure the results of that experiment, right? So if you think about like FDA, if you think about like the pharmaceutical companies, right? They always have like, I have a problem to solve. I'm going to run 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 experiments for this problem, right? Or I have a remedy that I want to go after because it's going to give me a lot. So I'm going to run a lot of experiments. Going out and just doing experiments for the sake of experimenting? No. Like you could do that, but maybe do it at a small scale somewhere, maybe more like a smaller kind of a test environment or experiment environment, whatever. Give them like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is. Manage it a little bit. But on the bigger ones, give them the resources, right? Give them the GPUs, give them the human resources to be developers, give them the business resources to say, how does the idea come through? Give them the leader that says, hey, I will sponsor this because it's value generated. And now you have a core team that is like, if you think about Agile, you have a pod, right? That is focused in on solving that problem by doing all these experiments. And maybe not one model, maybe it's not a OpenAI, maybe it's not a Gemini one, and maybe it's not a Claude, maybe it's somebody else, right? Or maybe you need to train it and create your own. But at least you have a purpose that you're going after. And that is what I'm seeing more and more winning right now, right? Than just going out and doing whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jay, I think this, what you were saying, I had a question, and what you were saying is kind of like linked to my next question, which is like, in traditional projects, success, it's like visible. You have like launches, you have milestones, you have applause, everyone celebrates. With AI, I feel like success can be very subtle, and maybe it's like an ongoing process, and it would be like maybe harder to celebrate.
Yeah.
So how do you think AI is changing like the emotional experience of success for teams? And that's something that leaders need to rethink, like what does success mean right now?
Yeah. You're getting to an interesting perspective question, thought here is AI truly causing, like there's a whole thing about causation aspects of it, right? Causing our inability to celebrate milestone successes, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm a big believer of like, no, it's how we interpret it and how we think about it and how we plan it and how we communicate it, right? I think if someone is like, hey, like back in the days, if you think about like statisticians, you lock them in a room for 6 months and then they come out like, oh, you know what? I think I have a model that works in predicting X, Y, Z. Mm-hmm. That's not AI. That's not how you should think about AI. That's not how you should imagine the working product of AI. I think Agile and AI development and experimentation work very well together. You could do a proof of concept and say, hey, I just want to see if this agent is able to read this document and give me good results back in an accurate way and cite it where it found it. That's a short piece. You know what? That's a win. It can do this. Now I want to take it to like, can it do this SharePoint site and all the documents in there? That's a big win. It's how you then communicate those small wins and breaking them down that's important. And guess what? That's what Agile and the sprints and the ceremonies and demos are all about. It's adopting that in that same framework is going to get you to solve that issue that you were talking about. Does that help?
Yep. All right, so we have 5 more minutes, Ed. I'm sure you probably have a couple more questions. So let's dive into maybe the last 2.
Mm-hmm, sure. So we were talking about teams, right, Jay? And for you, what's the ideal composition of teams that are working with AI these days? What would be, like these positions that they need to fulfill, and who would be them working on it?
Yeah. So I did this way back in my previous company where we took something and over 5,000 people were using it, but it was just like, it's like a Google search and you got to parse through a whole bunch of documents and all that, right? So we horse raced a couple of models, right? And so the team composition that I created was, you had a few of like now what we call AI engineers, right? But it was basically taking some machine learning engineers and some data scientists and molded them into like an AI engineer, right? The product manager of that product, a BSA, business systems analyst, to say, hey, how are we translating some of these things? A change agent, like a change person, to say, hey, how am I going to communicate this out? How am I going to manage this? All that kind of stuff. The product owner and a product manager, we were able to kind of, because it was a smaller team, we just kind of combined it into one, and a scrum master all into one. But if you think about larger teams and maybe you have multiple teams, you may want to have a scrum master, you may want to have product owners, and then the product manager over it, right? And the last piece was the business stakeholder who owned the P&L for that product. Like having them all together was very, very critical, because now you have an end-to-end group that are going after one problem, and they're looking at ways of solving it, and they're using different technology and tools and enabling it to be able to do that. And so having that, and then even the engineers were able to do UI builds, right? They can go in and do data work. It's almost like a full stack engineer type of thing, right? That you don't need that many people to be able to go experiment and say, I have a use case, let me go test it out.
Okay. Yes, that sounds pretty interesting. And especially how these teams are evolving and will keep evolving as the technology does, right? I think there'll be more changes if we want to see it, but at the same time, more possibilities for the people working in these teams. Okay. Finally, I would really like to hear from you before we go. What would be the takeaways that you want the audience to have, right, from this conversation?
Yeah.
And in particular, what would be the core recommendation that you would have for them now that they decided to start adopting AI into their companies, right?
Yeah. No, it's great. So I'll break it down into kind of four things, right? One is internalize that it's not just about efficiency, it's about intelligence. Okay, that's one. Second is don't just think about this as like you are automating your workflow, right? You are reimagining your workflow with human and technology together. And that means your business model shifts, changes and all that, right? What customers experience, whatever. The third one is think about how you start, okay? Don't just go in chaotic and just go do whatever. Start with use cases, start with prioritization, start with AI governance, make sure you have good controls in place, right? Guardrails, so that you can explain and all that. Think about the training that needs to happen to people that need to be using this or upskill, right? Think about the change management aspects of it. Also, think about the measurement that needs to be put in place to say, am I achieving the results that I was looking for, that the investment and the ROI is going to be here or not? And the last one, which is the big one of that kind of how to start, is the one team, which I just talked about earlier. Act and behave and function as one team. And then the last thing I will leave you with, the fourth piece, is the business model is all about, it's not about like, hey, replacing people and all this automating everything. Is that the business model is that it learns continuously, adapts instantly, right? And earns, now I'm going to come back to this one, and earns the customer's trust over time, right? And that kind of puts the back in what we started with the conversation about technology and customer trust, is you don't want to do this to them. You want to do this with them.
Yes, fantastic takeaways, Jay. Thank you so much. I think the overall conversation, I think it's been super enjoyable, and we really appreciate you coming here with us today. As Gabby was saying, I definitely have more questions, so most likely
I'm happy to have more conversations. Come on.
Exactly.
I love this. I mean, I think this is like this is the most exciting I've been in a long time, and I think it's all the pieces are coming together. That at least from my perspective, I built almost 30 years off of the foundation to be able to then give back, right? Pay it forward to others, develop others, grow others, so that other leaders can learn from what I've experienced.
Yes, and it shows. Thank you so much, Jay, and hopefully we will have the opportunity to have this another conversation soon, right?
Awesome.
And yes, also thank you so much, Gabby,
Right.
as
Yeah.
Thank
always
you, Gabby.
No,
for
thank you.
hosting the event. Mhm.
Yes, no, thank you, Jay. I think it's been very insightful. I hope and I know that this conversation was important for everyone and especially leaders to hear. And I really think the podcast served that purpose today with you and all your knowledge and experience. And I really loved it every second. As Ted was saying, we're more than happy to have you back. We can find another topic that you're,
Happy to.
as this passionate about and talk about it. So
Yeah.
we'll definitely keep in touch. Thank you so much for wanting to participate in this event. And yeah, looking forward for the next time.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for this time and opportunity to share and look forward to future ones.
Definitely. Well, thank you everyone that joined us today. We'll be back with another Tech Social soon. Thanks again and have a good one. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.